If you look at any kind of statistic that pertains to depression, anxiety, suicide, or any other mental illness out there, in the developed world at least, you can see that the cases are exploding. And look, you don't really, you don't even need to look at any kind of statistic. You just need to look around you. Look at your spouse, look at your family members, look at your siblings, look at your coworkers, look at your acquaintances, or just look at the general public. Do these people seem like happy people? Probably not. And in this video, we're going to be examining exactly why that is the case. Now, do keep in mind that the factors that I'm going to mention in this video, it's not in any kind of particular order. Okay. So not one factor is greater than the other. It's just that these factors coalesce together in order to bring about very unhappy people. So yeah, now that we've cleared that out, let's get started. So number one is that people are extremely overworked. Now I don't think this is a surprise, since in the developed world, working has become an end in and of itself, not a means to an end. Back then, people worked in order to sustain themselves, in order to pay rent, to pay the bills, to put food on the table, so that they can also enjoy what they really want to do and to spend time with family and friends. But today, it's not the case anymore. Working or your job has become the be all and end all. It's the most important thing. And the problem with this is that most people realize and know intrinsically that they have no real connection with what they're doing, because most jobs these days are shallow, menial. It's really just endless drudgery and extremely repetitive and mind numbing. On top of that, they also know that most of the jobs that they do are pointless. So much so that they know that if their job disappeared the next day, things would still be running in the world. It's as if nothing changed. And more to the point, they also know that they're just cogs in the machine, that their work is not really um, that meaningful and impactful to society by and large. And point of fact is, it's largely irrelevant and replaceable. They themselves are practically replaceable. To the point that if they disappeared the next day, and I know I've used this example in the previous example, you can just replace them with a fresh graduate from college, and there's really no change or any kind of difference out there. So, what does this do to the person's psyche? Well, a lot of people, they don't have a deep sense of fulfillment anymore, and this gnaws at their inner labyrinth, and it jeopardizes their well-being. Ultimately, it's extremely soul crushing. So that's point number one. People are extremely overworked. The second point I want to enumerate is that most people today are atomized. Most human beings today are atomized and alienated. Because look, if you look at the society we live in today, what do they always promote? Oh, be an individual, be this, be that. But the cornerstone or the keystone that they always try to drill into your head, to your heads, is that you have to be an individual. That's why that Jordan Peterson dude is so popular, because he's a useful tool to the establishment, and not many people are getting wind of this yet. Because look, in this neoliberal, hyper-consumerist, and hedonistic society that we live in, hyper-individualism is promoted. And look, it's very similar to the self-help rubbish, the stuff that he espouses. You know, self-improve, cold showers, journal every day, get a better diet, lift weights. Just change your mindset and everything's gonna be fine. You're gonna become a millionaire. You know, it's the same old dogmatic self-help mumbo jumbo, really. And all it does is really, it fosters megalomania and narcissistic tendencies within people. It doesn't solve the innate um innate intrinsic and structural problems that our society um, has today. And the problem with this hyper individualistic attitude is that it goes against the very fabric of our being, because at the end of the day, and this is biology and we've evolved to be this way, we're creatures dependent on others. It has been like this for like what, 99.99% of human history. It's just this new age thing that, you don't need other people. You can just be alone. You can stand alone, blah, blah, blah. And it really does go against the very fabric of our being, because look at the society that we have today, the civilization. Do you think you'll be able to build roads, museums, the infrastructure that you see around you, the cars, the houses, all alone? That would be impossible. You needed collective cooperation and effort in order to bring forth the society that we have today. And yeah, we're trying to destroy that thing that is very intrinsic to us, the need for others. It's like a poison to the human soul. And today, you can pretty much live in isolation as long as you can pay the bills, buy food in the grocery store, and find a way to earn a salary. You don't need to um, depend on Bob to gather the wood to start the fire. You don't need that farmer or your friend out there in the small village to collect apples or to make sure that the livestock is well taken care of. That's not the case anymore. Most people live in boxes, in condominiums, in suburbs, extremely isolated, and that's very sad. It's a very sad state of affairs that we have today. So the need for others and depending on another person for our survival has ceased to exist. And I've already reiterated this, but it really is anathema to the human soul, and it's poison to it. And I think this particular factor alone, the atomization and alienation of human beings, I think I'm not doing justice, because I can cover more ground, and there's so many facets, and there are other things that you can talk about with regards to this specific factor, the atomization and alienation of human beings. So probably make another video that focus solely on this. So the next thing here is the social media, and I know a lot of people have talked about this extensively already. People constantly compare themselves against each other. That the things that you see, particularly in Instagram and Facebook, these are not the everyday experiences of these people. Very rarely do these people actually have such stupendous lives that they showcase in their social media um, outlets. And you don't see the ups and downs and the difficulties that they have to go through, the normal vicissitudes of life. You don't see them showcase that in social media. So it really does give you a heavily skewed understanding of how their lives are. But something that a lot of these people who've talked about this never seem to understand this, or never seem to mention, is the fact that a lot of people are deprived of status. How do I mean by this? If you look at the whole thing with social media, okay, the fact that we're comparing each other to others, I think this stems from a very biological and I think intrinsic part of our nature. And because we see so many people who are so divorced from what we know as normal, well, this bruises our ego and self worth. Now, again, what do I mean by this? Well, look, Back then, pre-industrial revolution, we've lived in small towns, small communities, and we pretty much know each other, right? And for example, um, you were the carpenter of that town, so people really think that you're this amazing carpenter, that you can build very nice houses without the need for complex architecture back then. So a lot of your self-worth is tied to this. But nowadays, you understand that you're not the best carpenter because one click, one Google search, and you can see that, oh, look, Bob the Builder here is so much better in terms of being a carpenter than you are. So, in a way, it does shatter your paradigm that you're good at what you do. But at the same time, you don't understand that these people are like the 1% of the 1% of what they do. And most people are just average builders or average carpenters, right? I do hope that you understand what I'm trying to say here, because I don't think I've done justice in trying to explain what I mean by most people being deprived of status. But yeah, what I'm trying to reiterate here, or what I'm trying to explain, is that this uniqueness that you've thought that you've had, well, it turns out you're not very unique after all. You're just very normal in the wider scope of um, the human endeavor. But yeah, that's something that you have to tweak within your mind, because look, you have to understand that it doesn't matter if these guys are much better than you at what you do. At least in that small community or small town that you were inhabiting in, you were good at what you did, at what you at your profession, I mean. So you don't really have to compare yourself to the wider world, because for one, it doesn't make any sense to begin with. So yeah, the next thing I want to talk about is the loss of religion. Now, I've mentioned this in a previous video, and I've explicitly stated that whatever you may think about it, it gave people meaning, direction, and purpose in their lives. And if you look at Western society today, the Western world today, and increasingly the wider world, because Western ideals, culture, and morals are now being imported are now being exported to other countries via the internet. Well, you can see that the whole world is starting to become one one chasm, or one totalizing force. And if you're honest about it, it's as if we've lost the plot. We don't know what to do anymore, where we're headed, and what kind of future to aspire for. So clearly, there's some sort of spiritual void, and consumerism, hedonism, outright degeneracy, and debauchery. Well, they've tried replacing religion, but it's clearly failed at doing that. And the thing about these things is that it's inherently unsustainable, and it will cause ruin in society inevitably in the long run. So there, we lack some sort of unifying um, project that makes us very lively to wake up in the morning. And this is causing so many issues and problems we have today. So we need some sort of unifying body, unifying philosophy, unifying religion, call it what you will, in order to make good, to set the course of humanity at a much better route. Because, well, with the direction that we are traversing today, we are entering a new dark ages, baby. So unless we can um, change routes, or take another route, another off the beaten path, we're just gonna keep crashing down. So the final point that I want to enumerate, or the final factor that's causing a lot of this unhappiness in today's world, is clearly the deteriorating state of affairs. I mean, if you look at the our political structure, social structure, economic structure, cultural structure, they're all showing signs of decay, of rapid decay, even. And what does this make the individual feel? Well, most people today feel very less hopeful about the future. And the byproduct of this, of course, is that because most people don't really have that much hope in the future, apart from being fatalistic, nihilistic, and just very melancholic about the future of society, they don't have kids anymore. And on top of that, they're very unhappy and have a very pessimistic outlook on life. So, yeah, people feel very powerless, which in turn makes them very miserable and unhappy. So, how do we reverse course amidst this maelstrom that we are already in? Because, yeah, it's not that it's approaching, we're already in it. I think there really has to be a lot of structural changes, and we have to face reality for what it really is. We can't just sweep things under the rug. We need to have some kind of discussion, somebody to illuminate these real, tangible problems that we have. Because trying to reverse course, I think we're way past that stage. What we need is some kind of way to make sure that when we crash, we don't crash very hard. We crash slowly to the point that we can still recuperate, build back from the ground up, and have a much better society moving forward.